Well, next tonight, the stark reality facing many of today's young adults that they are much less likely to own their own home than generations before them. That may sound like a standard complaint from the cruelly labelled snowflake generation, but it's backed up by some pretty staggering statistics. Over the past 2 decades, house prices have grown around 7 times faster than the average incomes of young adults. In 1996, nearly 60% of 25 to 34-year-olds in London and the South East owned their own home. Today, that figure has more than half. Just a quarter of people aged 34 and under living in and around the capital are on the property ladder. It's why some are calling them generation rent.
At 25, Claudia has given up hope of owning her own home. Despite working as a finance consultant in the city, she can barely afford to rent her place in Brixton. A deposit, now costing an average of £107,000 in the capital, is out of the question.
It's really expensive, and obviously I would like to look to buy, but with rent you can't afford to save up at the same time anyway, let alone get by month to month. Despite having quite a good job in the city, it's quite depressing that even with that I'm not able to buy.
Claudia is far from being alone. New figures show just 20% of 25 to 34-year-olds own a property in London, half as many as 20 years ago. House prices keep growing upwards. They've increased by 152% compared to a 22% rise in wages. It's a real catch-22 for young people. Because deposits are so high, they have to rent. Because rents are so high, they can't save for a deposit. All the best paid jobs are here, but there's nowhere affordable to live nearby. So the option is to either move out of London altogether or depend on some serious financial support from parents. 40% of first-time buyers rely on the bank of mum and dad, often being lent tens of thousands of pounds. But even those on the property ladder are struggling with the next steps. Hannah scraped together a deposit with her boyfriend for a flat in Islington.
Our flat is quite small, and having a look outside of London and looking at options to move outside, we can get a lot more for our money and a lot nicer property. It's quite interesting to basically realise that long term we're not going to have a future in London.
The worst hit are so-called middle earners, those with wages between £22,000 and £30,000 a year. Many are university graduates, but their prospects of home ownership are far worse now than 20 years ago. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Well, to talk more about this, I'm joined by property expert Henry Pryor. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me about this. Now, you've bought and sold thousands of properties in London, haven't you? Why is it so difficult for young Londoners now, though?
Mainly because house price inflation in London, unlike many other parts of the country, prices have doubled over the last decade. Houses have become eye-wateringly expensive. Unless you've got the assistance, as we heard in your package, of the bank of mum and dad, it is impossible for the vast majority of people to scramble onto the lower rungs of the housing ladder. We
also heard as well, it's kind of this vicious circle, isn't it? The deposits are so high for people to get together. They then have to rent, but the rents are so high that they can never build up that deposit they need to buy their own home. So how do we, what's the solution to that? Well,
it is indeed one of the great difficulties is how you are able to save a deposit out of taxed income. These deposits have indeed got much larger, but lenders have loosened those terms, and they're now, particularly as a result of government's controversial Help to Buy scheme, they've been able to get away with slightly less in terms of deposit. It's just that it's the total sums, I'm afraid, that are involved. When we look at the madness we have at the moment of the bank of mum and dad lending money to their kids so their kids can afford mum and dad's house prices. That vicious circle, I'm afraid, will continue for as long as we allow it to. I mean, it is really depressing, isn't it? You see the people that Sam spoke to in his report there, and this is just their reality now. They're just thinking, well, we're never going to own our own home. I mean, is that really the only option they have now? Well, it does require political will, and I'm delighted to say that there is cross-party support gathering momentum to try and solve the national and local housing crisis in London. We can see the Mayor making strenuous efforts. We can see he's been backed up by the new Housing Secretary of State. His Communities and Local Government Department have been rebranded in order to concentrate on housing, and the Prime Minister has staked her personal reputation on solving it. So we've got political will, we've got lots of ideas, But we do have, I'm afraid, still a long way to go before we're able to break that vicious circle.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, Henry Pryor, thank you so much for coming in to talk to me about it. Thank you.